Welcome back, Focus Learners. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here for today's explainer, because we're unpacking one of the most chilling legends I've ever come across. We're looking at the story of the Dow Hill School. Now, to really get this narrative, we've got to set the scene. Imagine the misty, cold mountains of Kurseong, Darjeeling. It's the 100-year anniversary of this elite boarding school, and alumni are gathering for this massive reunion. Sounds like the perfect setup for catching up and nostalgia, right? Well, not quite. This reunion actually unearths a century-old curse, and it shows us how supernatural terror can perfectly intertwine with human guilt. Okay, let's dive into this. Just listen to this chilling question that completely shatters the illusion of a happy school reunion. Akshat, why didn't you save me? I mean, wow, this isn't just your standard jump scare. This specific quote actually establishes the entire framework of our explainer today. See, we're not just looking at a run-of-the-mill haunting here. This is a profound story about deep, lingering guilt and betrayal. This accusation, which was literally leveled by a ghost against one of our main subjects, tells us that the horror here isn't just about what goes bump in the night. It's about what happens when your past mistakes literally come back to haunt you. So let's look at the main subjects of this narrative. We've got two childhood friends. Akshat, who grew up to be a filmmaker in Mumbai, and Kabir, a banker living in New York. They both get an email inviting them to the centenary celebration of their alma mater. But what's absolutely crucial to remember here is that they haven't spoken in 10 years. Like, they had completely deleted each other's contact info. When they finally do reconnect and arrive at the school, there is this incredibly jarring dissonance. On one hand, you have those warm, nostalgic memories, recess bells, the rush to the canteen, familiar teachers, but contrast that with the terrifying reality they actually step into. It's dead silence, empty corridors, and locked classrooms where the teachers they thought they saw just vanish into thin air. Now, every good piece of folklore has rules, right? And Kurseong's local legends are rigidly defined. Step 1, never, under any circumstances, visit the forest path known as the Death Road at night. Step 2, always return to the safety of the hostel before 7 p.m. I want you to pay close attention to these rules, because laying out these explicit, supernatural boundaries built some incredible tension. We know immediately that these visiting alumni, emboldened by adulthood and maybe a little peer pressure, are absolutely going to test these boundaries. So the key here is really understanding the geography of this legend. The Death Road isn't just some spooky nickname kids came up with. In local lore, it's treated almost like an officially documented geographic anomaly. It's the specific, notorious forest path that borders the Dow Hill School. Think of it as the epicenter for the region's supernatural activity. By strictly forbidding nocturnal visits, the folklore effectively quarantines this area. It turns it into a psychological forbidden zone that, frankly, practically begs human curiosity to breach it. Let's track how this builds across a terrifying 24-hour timeline, because the escalation here is rapid and structured perfectly to just maximize dread. So it's 2:15 a.m. on their first night, and Kabir heads to the washroom for a smoke. He repeatedly hears someone calling his name. Kabir? Is that you, Akshat? And when he finally checks outside the stall, he comes face to face with a standing corpse. Yikes, right? Fast forward to 8 a.m., and the alumni are forced into this mundane, mandatory school assembly, which is just a wild contrast to the nighttime terror. But the true catalyst? That happens at 4 p.m. Giving into peer pressure from their friend Yash, a group of alumni makes the highly questionable afternoon decision to visit the old football ground, which happens to border the cursed forest. And, as you might expect, that foolish decision leads to a terrifying realization. While they're hanging out at the football ground, Akshat and Kabir are bickering when suddenly this blood-curdling scream rips through the air. They rush over to find their friend Yash collapsed in the bushes, frantic, just panting. He tells them he saw someone watching from the foliage. He said it was a body with absolutely no head. Yet, inexplicably, they could hear the haunting sound of laughter echoing around them. This horrifying visual triggers absolute panic. Realizing it's rapidly approaching that 7 p.m. curfew we talked about, the group makes a desperate, heart-pounding dash back to the safety of the school gates. But here's the thing. Safety is a total illusion. In the sheer chaos of the sprint back, Akshat gets locked out of the school gates. The campus is deserted, the sun is setting, and right there, in the deepening shadows, he encounters a ghost. It's a 16-year-old boy in a school uniform weeping. It's their old roommate, Arjun. And Arjun delivers this devastating piece of exposition. He reveals that not only was his life violently ended, but the grief actually caused his parents to commit suicide shortly after his death. Akshat is eventually found outside the gates screaming, bleeding from the head and just completely terrified. Now, what's really interesting about this is how the narrative pivots sharply here. This brings us to a crucial, lingering question. But what really happened to Arjun 10 years ago? With this single inquiry, we are no longer just looking at a standard haunted location or a simple ghost story about a headless apparition. Oh no, we are now delving deep into a psychological thriller centered around human morality, hidden secrets, and a decade-long cover-up involving our main subjects. To answer that question, we have to turn to the testimony of Principal Thapa. He rushes to the medical room when Akshat wakes up screaming Arjun's name, and he recounts the tragic descent of his favorite student. A decade ago, right before the crucial 12th grade board exams, Arjun, who was the brightest student in school, began deteriorating. He claimed a headless boy was calling to him from the football ground every night at 8 p.m., and eventually this entity started appearing in his dorm room. The tragic climax of this timeline? Arjun went missing, and his severed head was later discovered right on the death road. But hold on, because here is the bombshell twist that brings all the pieces together. Notice the stark contrast between the official story and the dark reality. The cover-up was that Akshat and Kabir casually told the principal they noticed Arjun had just wandered off toward the death road, which prompted a search that found him too late. But the dark, horrifying truth is finally confessed by a broken Akshat. 10 years ago, from their dorm room, Akshat and Kabir literally watched a headless ghost physically drag a screaming, crying Arjun away into the forest. Arjun begged them for help, and they just sat there. They watched him get dragged to his death, and they did absolutely nothing. Which brings us to the most chilling revelation of all. Just listen to this confession. We didn't help him because we wanted to score well. He always won Student of the Year. Let that sink in. This is the twisted, deeply selfish jealousy right at the core of the curse. Akshat and Kabir weren't just paralyzed by fear. They were motivated by envy. See, Arjun was the principal's favorite, he got special classes, he was totally going to ace the board exams. By letting the supernatural entity take him, they essentially eliminated their academic competition. This singular act of vicious negligence didn't just kill Arjun, it ruined the reputation of the school, it traumatized a generation of students, and it sealed their own cursed fate. Zooming out for a second, we uncover a century-long cycle of tragedy. The mechanics of this curse are actually fascinating. It didn't start with Arjun. Exactly 100 years ago, which perfectly explains the centenary anniversary setting we started with, a criminal brutally beheaded a child and discarded the head on the death road. That original trauma created the headless ghost, which, 90 years later, targeted Arjun. Arjun was then betrayed by his friends, which added a whole new layer of tragedy and created a new ghost, Arjun himself, who now haunts the present day. It's just a cascading timeline of violence and betrayal. So what is the aftermath of bringing such a dark truth into the light? Well, the price of this confession is total isolation. The next morning, as the alumni depart, Akshat and Kabir are entirely shunned. Their peers look at them with absolute disgust, realizing these two let their best friend die over exam scores. Overwhelmed by a guilt they can frankly never wash away, they quietly leave a massive donation check with the principal. They get into their cars, and in this bleak repetition of the past 10 years, they promise never to speak again, deleting each other's numbers forever. They might be alive, but they are completely broken. Which leaves us with this final, lingering thought. This lore teaches us that some places hold onto the past with a terrifying grip. Kurseong is indeed a breathtakingly beautiful place, until 7 p.m. The strict rules of the folklore stand as a literal warning to anyone who thinks they can outrun their guilt. So, I leave you with this. Knowing the tragic, century-long cycle of betrayal and the spirits that guard these boundaries, are you willing to find out what haunts the woods after dark? Thank you so much for joining me for this deep dive. Focused learners, keep asking questions, keep exploring the unknown, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.